All right, picture this. It's Manhattan, April 3rd, 1973. The streets are absolutely bustling, the noise is deafening, and a man named Martin Cooper is standing right there on the sidewalk, holding this plastic device. It's roughly the size of a brick. And he's about to do something that literally alters the course of human history. We are skipping the usual pleasantries today to drop you right into this explainer on the origin of the cell phone. More specifically, we're looking at the brilliant and honestly kind of rebellious vision of the man who actually brought it to life.
Okay, let's dive into this, because what happens next isn't just a massive technological milestone. It's honestly one of the greatest and maybe slightly dangerous mic drops in corporate history. So Cooper dials a number, holds this bulky, heavy device up to his ear and says, "Joel, this is Marty. I'm calling you from a cell phone, a real handheld portable cell phone." Now the guy on the other end of that line, that was Dr. Joel S. Engel. He was Cooper's chief counterpart at rival AT&T. So Cooper is literally standing out in the wide open on 6th Avenue, totally risking getting clipped by a passing taxi, just to rub it in his biggest competitor's face that Motorola had beaten them to the punch. No way, right?
The actual sequence of events that day really shows just how audacious this whole stunt was. I mean, this wasn't some quiet, highly controlled laboratory test, not at all. Motorola had actually scheduled a huge media press conference over at the New York City Hilton, but right before walking in, Cooper decides, you know what, let's test it out in the real world. So he stands out there on 6th Avenue. The device connects to a Motorola base station they had secretly installed on the roof of the Burlington house nearby, and that routed the signal straight into the AT&T landline system. So right there, right in front of reporters and all these bewildered New Yorkers walking by, this fierce underdog rivalry between Motorola and the giant AT&T Bell Labs reaches its absolute peak with the very first public handheld cellular call.
You have to understand, this wasn't just a race to build a cool new gadget. It was a massive philosophical battle about the entire future of human communication. See, Bell Labs had been tinkering with cellular ideas since way back in 1947, but their focus was entirely on calling a place. They were building car phones. We're talking massive systems requiring literally 30 pounds of equipment shoved into the trunk of your car. But Martin Cooper? He held this radical, completely paradigm-shifting vision, calling a person. Cooper fundamentally believed that a telephone number shouldn't be assigned to a desk, or a house, or a car. It should be assigned to an individual, a truly 100% personal device.
So, to turn that radical idea of personal communication into a reality, Motorola really had to push all their chips to the center of the table. They were designing what they called the Dynatac. And it's absolutely crucial to realize that this was nowhere near a guaranteed success. It was a monumental risk. It required just incredible resources, deep belief from the top management, and an unparalleled engineering push to make it happen. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer financial gravity of that bet. It is staggering. $100 million. That is exactly what Motorola's top management invested into Cooper's mobile phone concept between 1973 and 1993. And here is the real kicker. They did that before seeing a single dime in revenue. Not one dime. They poured millions upon millions into a technology that the world didn't even know it needed yet. They were banking entirely on Cooper's absolute conviction that the future of communication was untethered.
But, money alone doesn't build a revolution, right? Execution does. Just think about this timeline for a second. 90 days. Once the concept was officially greenlit, Cooper assembled this brilliant engineering team and basically pushed them to their absolute physical and mental limits. They managed to design, engineer, and completely assemble the very first working product prototype in less than 3 months. It is just a staggering timeline for a piece of technology that, quite literally, did not exist before they started building it.
So what exactly did they build in those frantic 90 days? Meet the Dynatec 8000X. It was affectionately and honestly quite accurately dubbed the brick, or sometimes the shoe phone. The physical specs on this thing are almost comical by today's standards. I mean, if you're holding a sleek little smartphone in your hand right now, just think about holding this instead. It weighed 2.5 pounds. That's over a kilo. A huge chunk of that weight was just the battery, which weighed like 4 to 5 times more than what we use today. It was a solid 10 inches long. And for all that bulk, you got a grand total of 30 minutes of talk time. And when it died, you had to plug it in for a grueling 10-hour recharge. It was massive, it was incredibly clunky, and honestly, it was absolutely magnificent.
Now, if you're sitting there wondering how consumers would ever deal with only getting 30 minutes of battery life, Cooper actually had a fantastic perspective on this. He said, the battery lifetime wasn't really a problem because you couldn't hold that phone up for that long. You really have to appreciate the practical reality of the situation here. Just imagine holding a 2.5-pound dumbbell up to your ear for half an hour while trying to have a normal conversation. The battery didn't need to last all day because your arm certainly wouldn't.
But behind the funny quotes and the giant heavy hardware, there were some massive business implications at stake. The development of the Dynatac wasn't just about consumer convenience. It was really about breaking a huge monopoly. At the time, AT&T completely dominated the telecom landscape. By proving that handheld cellular technology was actually viable, Cooper and Motorola successfully pushed the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, to start assigning cellular licenses to competing entities. They essentially cracked the entire market wide open. They prevented AT&T from monopolizing cellular service and paved the way for the super competitive wireless industry that we all rely on today.
So the crucial point is that Cooper wasn't just a clever inventor, he was a profound visionary when it came to how data would eventually scale. And that brings us to what's known as Cooper's Law, or the Law of Spectral Efficiency. It basically states that the maximum number of voice conversations or equivalent data transactions that can be conducted in the useful radio spectrum over a given area literally doubles every 30 months. This is deeply fascinating stuff. Cooper realized that our ability to transmit different radio communications simultaneously in the exact same place has been growing at this relentless pace ever since Marconi's first transmissions way back in 1895. He essentially predicted the compounding, explosive growth of all these invisible data networks that we swim in every single day.
And Cooper himself completely matched that relentless pace. That famous phone call in 1973, that was really just the opening act. If you look at his career trajectory, his forward momentum never stalled out. He spent 29 years at Motorola, rising up to vice president and finally bringing the commercial cellular network to market in 1983 after 10 whole years of development. But he didn't stop there. He founded Dina LLC in 1986 with his wife Arlene Harris to act as a launchpad for new wireless companies. That exact same year, they co-founded what would eventually become Great Call, creating the Jitterbug phone to make cellular service super simple and accessible for senior citizens. Then in 1992, he co-founded Arraycom, growing it from a tiny seed-funded startup into a global leader in smart antenna software with literally hundreds of patents. The guy has spent his entire life pushing the boundaries of connectivity. Which really leaves us looking forward. If Martin Cooper's 1973 vision transformed how we connect by taking the phone number away from a physical place and giving it to an individual person, how will our untethered devices evolve to define our entire digital identity in the future? Think about it. We started with a literal brick that could barely hold a 30-minute charge, and now we hold the entirety of human knowledge right in our pockets. As the spectrum continues to double and our devices become even more deeply integrated into who we are, it feels like the only limit is the scope of our own vision. Just a little something to think about the next time you pull that device out of your pocket.